Call off. Thank you for joining us today for our keynote presentation with Dr. John Izzo. My name is Casey Lowry and I'm on the leadership team here at Applied Imaging. I was first introduced to Dr. Izzo's message a few years back at a Grand Rapids Econ Club luncheon and knew the first time I heard him speak about purpose in the workplace that his message would resonate really well with our culture. We understand that to be strong in business, you must lead with purpose. Our purpose is to serve our customers with state-of-the-art technology, and in this day and age, we're trying to reinvent ourselves just as everyone else is. And our other purpose is to make sure that we're a trusted partner to all of our customers and vendors in this time of uncertainty. Through leadership and mindset, we're committing to continuing these efforts together. Dr. Izzo has a great message about leading and thriving in difficult times, and we've always found his teachings to be beneficial to our organization. He's helped some of the world's most admired companies focus on the impact of purpose in their business. So please join me in welcoming the author of The Purpose Revolution and Stepping Up, Dr. John Izzo.
So thank you for the virtual claps. So first of all, welcome, and it's great to be here this morning. I want to send you my personal greetings. I've been doing some work with Casey and John and the team at Applied Imaging over the last number of years here, and have a lot of respect for their company and the values and the way they have led their organization, including through this time. And then to then make this available to you guys, is really exciting. So I'm Dr. John Izzo. I've spent the last, I guess, almost 30 years of my life now working with about 900 companies all over the world. I've written 8 books on leadership and corporate culture. And so I've lived through personally a few of these uncertain periods of time and help navigate my clients through them. And so today I want to really talk about how do we lead and thrive during uncertain times. And so, I'll speak for a while and really give a chance for some questions. We will also make the slide deck and the recording available to you afterwards, so you'll be welcome to share that with colleagues or people within your organization later. And there's some contact information on there if you want to get a hold of me. So first, I guess, let's begin with just recognizing that I can't get my slides to advance. Here we go. One of the interesting things about moments like this, which, ostensibly is surely a crisis in a lot of ways, one that few of us have experienced in our lifetime. And the Chinese symbol for crisis is actually a combination of 2 symbols, one for danger and one for opportunity. And I guess that's the place that I would like to begin talking about leading and thriving in uncertainty, is the recognition that what appears to be a crisis, and is in many ways, is also an opportunity in a whole variety of ways. It's an opportunity for us to reflect personally on what's important and what we want to take forward. I just did a study at the university where I'm on the faculty of fathers during COVID, and the experience that for Father's Day, we did a study of survey and interviews of fathers during COVID. And it's a great example of this, where many fathers said, well, this has been a very challenging time, but I actually feel closer to my kids. I feel like this is more, in many ways, like I wish family life was, where we're really all together. And maybe I don't really want to go back to the old normal. I think of many of my clients who have realized they're able to accomplish things at record speed, like one of my clients that did a digital transformation in 3 weeks, that before the crisis, they were told would take 2 years. And so, it's really important to kind of recognize that, this is, of course, a challenging time. It's also a time for, opportunity. I always tell people, when you're going through uncertainty, it's always good to be a good student of history. You know, crises come and go, and at the time we don't imagine how we can get through them, but we're all the ancestors of survivors. I always like to remind people that every one of us on this call is here because for thousands of years our ancestors survived various crises, enough that we're here in the call. And we often have more courage and resilience than we think we do. And not only will we get through this, but if we're really open, we might learn and take some things forward that will be valuable in the world ahead. And I would encourage you even now, while we're still in the middle of this, to begin to ask questions like, what am I learning personally in this time that I want to take forward? What are we learning in our business that we want to take forward? What are we learning about our clients that we want to really lean into as this abates, which does not in any way diminish the challenging times that we're in. And I want to talk about how do we really thrive while we're in those challenges. But again, I want to give you a word of encouragement. We're all the ancestors of survivors, and we will get through this. And we will get through this probably with some learnings, as hard as it is. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is just reminding us, and many of you run a business or run parts of a business, is that one of the opportunities in crisis is that it turns out more market share is gained during downturns in business than during upturns. This is kind of a hidden fact to most people, even who lead businesses. Now, even if my business is down at the moment, and I can speak for myself, my business is down from the previous years by a great extent. But market share is different than the amount of business that one has at the moment. The pie will grow again. And when it does, the question is who winds up, having the piece of that pie when that's over. And so this is a really important time to recognize that our clients, our customers are watching how we handle this situation, how we handle this moment. So here's some things to think about as we're going through this in terms of the long-term success of the business. First, this is a great time to work on relationship more than immediate business. I think of a banking client of mine, RBC, that, they're not making as many loans right now, but they're doing a lot more checking in with their clients. They're really asking, how can we serve our clients right now and help them through this crisis? And sometimes all we can do is check in a genuine way and see how they're doing. Great time to work on relationship. I like what one friend of mine said: when someone is drowning, you don't want to yell out to them in the water that you have swimming lessons for sale. It's really important that we're genuinely there for our clients. The second thing is really to ask how you can serve your clients in ways you may not have served them before. And I give you an example in my business. I do a lot of speeches. I do a lot of my work in person. But we're taking this time to really lean into the virtual world in a new way, creating virtual courses that we'll be able to use over time later, learning how to deliver virtually better. I think of Applied Imaging, that realizes one of the challenges for their clients is making sure people don't come to work sick. So they've really leaned into how do we get temperature monitors for our clients. And to me, that's a great example of a business that they might not even have thought of ever being in, but by really staying attentive to what their clients are experiencing. Another thing is to really, this is a great time to really check in with your network. One of the things that, this time might afford us is, while business is slower for many of us, even though we tend to want to just go out and drum up more business, that it's a great time to really check in with the parts of our network we may not have checked in with for a while. I can speak for myself that, I've had communications with clients I haven't talked to in some cases for a couple of years, right? And just reaching out to them and connecting and finding out how they're doing. And, some of them have given me business, although I have to admit that wasn't the reason I was reaching out to them. I was reaching out to them because I realize this is a challenging time. So start to think about who are some people perhaps that you haven't checked in with for a while. And also remember that your personal brand is growing during this time. I think of a CEO, one of my clients, who said to me something that really struck me about a week ago. He said that, you know, we've noticed some of the people we thought would step up are not stepping up. And other people that we thought were not really high performers are stepping up during this time. And I think it's really important that whether you're the CEO or a team leader or an individual performer, that your brand is really, people are watching you even more than ever now in terms of how you're showing up. And some of the ways we want to make sure we show up are optimistic and positive. You know, we know that people who are perceived as optimistic and positive are about 90% more likely to be admired than those who show up negative or pessimistic. We know that people who show up as other-oriented, really interested in what's happening to others and for others, are much more likely to be admired. We know that people who are opportunity-focused instead of problem-focused, you know, there's a lot of problems right now. But if I'm showing up as a person saying, let's look at what we can do instead of what we can't do, let's look at what we're able to be successful at right now, these are the kind of people we want to be around. And of course, finally, people who show up with 100% responsibility. This is a time when it's easy to become a victim, right? It's easy to be pointing to what others need to do. But the more we take personal responsibility, the more our brand grows. And so whether you're the CEO or a team leader or a frontline performer, remember your brand is really going to grow or going to shrink during this time. So just be aware, how am I showing up? How am I showing up every day? And again, be attentive to your clients' needs. Listen to the things they're asking for, and ask, how might we perhaps do some new areas of business that we might not before? And remember, even though the pie may be shrunk at the moment, we're growing our reputation right now. So when the pie grows, we're the first people that people think of. Now, and again, save your questions. We'll definitely be dealing with questions as we get further on. So what about engaging your team during this time? Well, first, this is a time to be more connected and even more appreciative than usual. The wins are probably smaller for many of you than they usually are. We have to celebrate them even more. It's really important to keep our team encouraged. Every win needs to be celebrated, every small victory, because really easy for people to get down, and we know when people get down, they don't perform well. And really important to stay connected to your team. And even though I know many of us are zoomed out, use the video tools. If people are working more virtually, make sure that you're staying connected to people. It's great. It's really important they see your face. Same thing with your clients, right? If you can do a video call and your customers instead of an audio call, there's just something about seeing that person often now in their home that can create more personal connections. If you're managing people virtually for the first time, one of the most important things is to really manage people by objectives rather than micromanaging people. One of the things I've been doing with my team is just talking about weekly objectives, even more than I did before the crisis. So what do we want to accomplish this week? It's very hard often for people to be focused because there's a lot going on in their lives and in the macro environment. So the best way to manage the team, what are we trying to accomplish this week? And then make sure in that next weekly meeting you come back to, how do we do on those objectives from the last week? If you're not used to managing people virtually, please don't try to micromanage their time. If you're going to manage them, manage by the objectives and the things that you've agreed need to be done this week. If you're the person running the business, try to be as transparent as you can about what's happening in the business. People thrive when there's certainty. People thrive when they know what's going on. So try to be as open and honest as you can, and only make promises that you can keep. And this is really important. State your intentions. If your intention is for people not to lose their job, but you feel you can't promise that, then state your intention. But be very careful about the promises we make. Only make promises that we can keep. Really important that we stay focused on what we can accomplish now. One of the dangers for us as leaders is to expect more than people can deliver now, so that they're kind of in a chronic state of feeling like they're failing. Be realistic about what we can accomplish. So, a great example in my own business is, while we can't do as many programs right now, we can do a lot more developing of programs that we can offer in the future. So I want to keep my team focused on development as well as selling, because we can accomplish that now, and they get a great deal of success by doing that. Make sure in your teams you include check-ins. And so every time your team comes together, just do a quick 1-minute check-in. How's it going? One of the things that I've found in many of my clients is those check-ins have really become much deeper. And these relationships that you're developing during the time of uncertainty can really serve you down the road. So include check-ins. If you see someone on your team acting way outside of their normal curve of how they're showing up, more negative, any signs of depression, any signs that, of, let's say, anger, it might be important to suggest that they check in with someone. So really be aware of what's happening in terms of people on whatever their normal bell curve is. And finally, if you want a tool to just find out how your team is doing, there's an organization called Amplify that's offering a free survey that you can have your team take about how they're feeling and how they're going, and you can actually have them check in as often as you want. That it's on the screen there, amplify.com/wellbeing. I don't have any skin in the game. I have no relationship with them, but it's apparently a tool some of my clients are using. Now, Casey mentioned purpose, and I think it's a great time to remember the role that purpose plays during uncertainty. We know that people who stay connected to purpose thrive in uncertainty and crises radically different than those who don't focus on purpose. Some of you may be, as I am, a fan of Viktor Frankl's work. Viktor Frankl was a student of Sigmund Freud, who was sent to Auschwitz, the concentration camp, during World War II. He was separated from his entire family, including his parents, his siblings, and his new wife, and wound up being the only one of all of them to survive the concentration camps. And one of the things that Frankl noticed when he was at Auschwitz was that people who were connected on what they could give to others, how they could be helpful to others, who had a sense of what they wanted to contribute, were by far the people who survived, literally lived through the concentration camp. So we know from more mundane situations that people who focus on what they can give during a crisis often thrive psychologically better than those who don't. And it makes sense if you think about it, because we have 100% control over what we give, but almost no control over what we get. And companies are the same way. The more that we think about how can we add value to our clients right now, rather than what can we get from them, are going to thrive in a different way. If you have a purpose as an organization, remind your team of what your purpose is. Keep leaning into that purpose. Ask yourself, what is my purpose? And two ways to think about that. One is, later on, will you be proud of how you showed up in this moment? One of the things that I've discovered is that asking that question is really quite a game changer. Will you be proud of how you showed up in this moment? Think about this for a moment. This is a situation that, if we're fortunate, will only happen once in our lifetime. And we have only one chance to decide whether we are proud about how we showed up in this moment, how my team showed up in this moment. And finally, I'll give you a gift I got from a colleague of mine who said, I hate the word COVID now because every time I go to the news, all I see is the word COVID. So he said he had to reimagine the word COVID for himself. And so he changed it to, whenever he saw the word COVID, he translated it into control over the value I deliver. So that he said, you know, I have 100% control over the value I deliver. So how can I deliver value to the people in my life today? It might be just a smile to a stranger on a walk, a call to a colleague or a client to just see how they're doing. It might be a donation to the food bank in my community because I'm doing okay and others aren't. I have control over the value that I deliver, so lean into that every day. Now, what about the care of yourself? As leaders, it's so important that we stay resilient during this time. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the things we know about staying resilient when these kind of things are going on. The first thing is, this is a really important time to double down on whatever keeps you centered and keeps you in a state of positivity and well-being. And that's different for all of us. So, for example, for me, getting outside and exercising is one of those things. I go to the gym almost every day. I can't go to the gym right now. So I had to find a new routine. And for me, that routine wound up being a daily bike ride, a 45-minute bike ride. And I have been religious about carving out the time for that bike ride every single day. And it has made a huge difference. And here's the funny thing, during uncertain times, we actually often don't want to do the very things that are good for us because we're kind of down, but we have to double down on the things that are good for us. Second, we need to manage the information that we allow to come into our kind of sphere. Many people talk about the more they're connected to the news, the more down and depressed they get. So, you know, there's an old saying, you know, about that you've probably heard about, when you say something to someone, ask yourself, is it useful? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Well, this is a good time to ask about the information you expose yourself to. Is this useful? Is it helpful? Is it kind? And I'll give you one example of something that's helped me. I mostly watch the business news now. And here's the reason I watch business news, because business news tends to focus on fixing problems instead of just the problem. So if you watch the regular news, they spend about 90% of the time talking about what all the bad things that are happening and about 10% talking about solutions. If you watch business news, they spend about 90% of the time interviewing and talking to people who are trying to solve the problem, and you still get enough of what's actually happening. And for me, at least, I found my mood changed when I stopped watching the regular news and started mostly exposing myself to the business news. Very important time to remember, we are what we expose ourselves to. And so just think about, is what I'm exposing myself to helpful to me? Here's another simple thing. This is a great time, if you're not a meditator, to start meditating. And I don't mean like you don't have to go become the Dalai Lama, take a meditation course. Here's what I mean. Before you begin your day, just take a couple of minutes and center yourself. Just think about the day ahead. Think about what you want to accomplish. Take some breaths. When you go into a meeting, an important meeting, take a few breaths. If any time during the day you feel out of sorts, take a few minutes, close your eyes, ask, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this right now? And one of the things you'll discover is that just lowering your heart rate and just taking that moment can make a huge difference. We know, by the way, that people who meditate even 10 to 15 minutes a day react to stress fundamentally different than those who don't meditate for 10 to 15 minutes a day. Here's an important one. Stay in the now. fascinating concept in psychology called anticipatory grief. Here's what that means. I'll demystify what sounds like a complicated word. Most of us, a great deal of our stress and crisis comes from all the things we imagine will happen in the future that haven't happened yet. What happens if this crisis goes on for 6 months? What happens if there's never a vaccine? What happens if there's a second wave? I think you'll agree with me, we cannot do anything about all the things that might happen in the future. All that will happen is the more we take on the grief of the future, the more we will be unable to act in the now. Or as Leo Buscaglia, the Italian philosopher, once said, worry never robs tomorrow of its sorrow, but it always robs today of its joy. So what happens is the more we think about all the things that may happen in the future, by the way, most of which will not happen, right? The odds are there will be a vaccine. The odds are the second wave won't be as bad as the first wave, right? And which is not to diminish any of the things that may happen, but the reality is anticipatory grief will not help you. It will only disable your ability to act. And finally, and this is a really important one, know who your go-to people are. I think if you're like me, we all have people in our lives, when we spend time with them, we feel better about the world. We all have people, when we spend time with them, we feel worse about the world. You know, I always say some people, the room gets better when they come in. Some people, the room gets better when they leave. Make sure you are spending time with your go-to people. I have a few people in my life. I know when I talk to them on any given day, I will feel worse about this crisis than I did before. And I have to talk to them once in a while because they're friends and I don't want them to think I've forgotten about them. But I don't talk to those people as much as I would normally unless they need me, because I want to talk to the people who I feel better when I talk to them. And we all know those kind of people. Remember, we are what we expose ourselves to. Now, before I get to some questions and some reflections, I want to make a few more important points. This is a time to really stay alert as a leader. It's really important to stay alert. Alert to your team. A time to really ask what's happening for them. A time to ask what they need from you. A time for you to stay alert to what's happening with your clients, to be alert to what their needs are, to be alert to how you might serve them in a different way, to make them aware of how you can serve them in different ways, to find ways to add value to them, even if it's not the normal way that you would add value to them. Wake up in the morning and ask, what can I give to others? And to have realistic expectations of your team and realistic expectations of yourself. And again, not to take on the grief of tomorrow, all the things that may happen, could happen, are less likely to happen. Again, just remember, the more that we take that on, the more that we're in trouble. And finally, I just want to reinforce again this simple idea that market share is grown during downturns. And we might even begin to think about, why is that? Why does market share grow during downturns? And there's three primary reasons. First, during downturns, some of our competitors drop the ball. They show up in a way that people don't feel good about. Second, during times of transition is the time I am open or curious. I give you a simple example in my own life. I've been going to a barber for some time now, but I haven't been completely satisfied. But just because of my habit, I go to the same barber over and over again. But now that I haven't been going for a while, I'm more curious about other barbers. So when one of my colleagues said that he found a new barber and really liked them, I listened. I've been going to my dentist for a long time. I like my dentist. but his office hasn't opened as quickly as other offices have. So guess what? Because I have a problem I need to get fixed, I'm now asking people, who is other dentists that you know? Now, I may or may not switch dentists. I will probably switch barbers. You see what I'm saying? This is a time when actually people are more open and more curious. So the system is in flux. And finally, this is a time we may cement or grow old relationships, people who haven't done business with us for a while, but because we reach out in a genuine way, we suddenly reconnect with them. They remember who we are. They may or may not become clients. We may or may not get more business from them, but they often will wind up speaking highly of us. And in many cases, they will wind up giving us business. So just understand, when a system is in flux, there's opportunity in those moments. So I get a lot more I could say, but I want to open it up for some questions. So let's, I'm going to go where I can see the chat function too. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for the moment. And good, I can see some of you, and feel free to put on your video if you'd like. And you don't have to if you don't want to. And first of all, Ainsley, do we have any questions in the chat? Or this is a great time to put some questions or comments out there. We'll open it up to the floor for anyone to ask some questions. You can do that verbally as well by unmuting your mic. So Ainsley, any questions in the chat, or let's see if anyone wants to ask a question.
It's a great time for people to start asking questions.
Great, wonderful. Again, you can either do that in the chat or you can do it verbally. And questions, comments, here's something that's working in our business as well is a great time to let us know some of the things that you're doing that are working for you.
John, I have a question. Go
ahead, Denise.
What is your best resource for business news? What do you feel the best resource is?
You know, in terms of reading, I subscribe to Bloomberg, pretty fair and balanced, and lots of a variety of things on there. So I have it on my phone. You know, they're running a 3-month deal right now. You can subscribe digitally for like $1.99 for 3 months. Then when it's over, if you like it, just tell them you're going to cancel and they'll offer you $200 for the whole year. The other thing is CNBC. I listen to CNBC quite a bit, you know, sometimes on my Sirius radio, on my phone. I don't watch the TV as much. So those are my two sources that I find useful. And again, what I love is they talk mostly about people who are solving problems, and they have business people come on and say, hey, here's something I'm trying in my business that's working. So I find those two sources helpful to me. And I don't get overwhelmed with the negativity, which is just can be, I find, Denise, so destructive after a while. You know, Seth Godin, who's somebody I follow a lot. I like Seth. He's a marketing guru. And he's the only daily thing I get in my box every day is from Seth. And I love Seth said, you only need about 10 minutes a day to check in, and you pretty much find out everything going on in the world that you need to know. The other thing I found is local news more important for me now than national news or international news. Because for most of us, you know, those of you in Michigan, more important for you to know what's happening in Grand Rapids or in Michigan where you are probably, and some of you may not be in Michigan, than it is to know what's happening all over the world. So that's also been helpful for me, Denise, to shrink my world a little bit, just so I don't get overwhelmed. Others, comments or questions? Don't be shy now. We'd love to hear from you. Look in the chat here as well.
John, I don't have a question. I really just, what you said about the anticipatory grief, that resonated with me. So thank you for that.
You know, it's funny how much we indulge anticipatory grief in our lives, whether it's our finances, our kids. I bet a lot of you are parents in this room, and think of all the anticipatory grief we have about our kids. You know, they fail one course and we imagine them as like a, you know, a rank failure, you know, living in the basement for the rest of their lives. Or, you know, they have one heartbreak and we imagine they're going to be heartbroken for their entire lives, right? And that's one advantage of, like, you know, my kids are like 30 and 33. And so, you know, I kind of realize now all the things I worried about. And by the way, there's things I should have worried about and I didn't worry about, and I couldn't have anticipated that either. So, you know, I think, you know, this anticipatory grief is so important. And asking, what can I do now? What can I do now, right? And your team members will do that too. So what can we do now? What can we do now is so important. Other people, what resonated for your questions or comments that you have? Love to hear from some of you.
I'll ask another one, John. So what
Yeah, sure, go
are
ahead.
the top 5 things?
There's no
you would
limit
tell-
on no limit on questions. Go ahead.
What are the top 5 things you would recommend for your sales and marketing team at this time?
Yeah. So first, again, check in with people who are former clients, who perhaps, you know, are people who you haven't talked to in a while, right? And the second thing is authentically check in. Don't call to sell people something, call to see how they're doing. There's an old adage in the fundraising world: if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. And so, and of course we want to sell things, right? But I use myself as an example because I'm selling all the time. You know, I've been running a successful consulting business for, you know, almost 30 years. I've been checking in with a lot of people I haven't talked to in a while. And by the way, I probably should have talked to them more often, right? But, you know, as you know, we get busy, and when we have plenty of business coming in, we're too busy often to check with people we haven't checked in with in a while, or former clients, or people give us less business. And I just find by checking in and seeing how they're doing, and also asking, how can I add value? That's the third thing to your salespeople. So maybe you find an article that you think would be interesting, a video that you send to people. You know, how can I just, you know, add value electronically to our clients? You know, so that's another important thing. I think the third thing is, when you're managing salespeople, you know, you got to celebrate the victories and understand that the targets are tricky now. I know this is something a lot of my clients have been talking about, right? We have targets that we set pre-COVID, and people may or not meet those targets right now, right? So we have to be realistic about the targets, Denise, so we don't like demotivate people. And it's a fine line, because we still want to have high expectations and push people, right? Not to like be satisfied, you know, when it's not appropriate. But we also have to be realistic and celebrate those victories. Then I think that the other thing is, just be aware of that your clients may have needs you can meet. Again, I'll take a great example. You know, I'll use Applied Imaging as an example of, you know, listening to their clients say, you know, we need these temperature check devices for people to come back to work, right? And we're having a hard time getting them. So then, you know, the Applied Imaging folks going and saying, how can we check with the supply network so we can get these for our clients, right? And I'm not just saying that because they're, you know, on the phone here. I'm saying that's a great example to me, right? I had clients who canceled work, and not canceled work, but postponed it. We may have had agreement with them, you know, to do an in-person speech. But I proactively said to them, look, if you want to, we can transition this work into the virtual world. So I had a client I was supposed to do a big piece of work with, and we've wound up transitioning that entire piece of work into the virtual world. But the client would not even have thought of that if I hadn't raised it. So get your salespeople to think about, are there other ways we can deliver the work that we might have, and again, I don't know enough about your business, Denise, but stay alert for the needs that clients met that we might not have been thinking we're the ones to deliver that. So, I'm guessing that the applied imaging folks didn't even think of themselves in the temperature check business 6 months ago. I'm sure of it, right? If you ask John and Casey 6 months ago, so do you think you would ever be in the temperature check business? They would say, no, we don't do temperature checks, right? But by listening to what their clients were going through, they said, well, hey, our clients need this, even though that's not a business we're in, right? So I think encourage your salespeople to be curious. And Lord knows how long, I mean, this is a great example. How long will clients be interested in virtual seminars? Probably a pretty long time now. How long will people need temperature checks? Maybe for a long time now, right? So Denise, it might actually wind up being a business for a longer period of time than we imagined, not just a crisis opportunity. So authentically check in, talk to people you haven't talked to in a while, add value to them, really listen for the needs you might meet, set realistic targets for yourself. Remember, you're growing market share now, not just growing business. And I think if our salespeople understand now is the time to grow market share, even if business isn't growing, but we're growing market share for the long term because of how we're showing up. That's a really important concept for salespeople to understand. And some people, you'll find out, like that CEO who said this week, there will be people who will step up, and you'll find out now who your best salespeople are as well, to be honest. You'll find out those people who can stay up, stay successful, even when things are tough. So, you'll know. And I guess one last thing, some people, we need to manage their activities now, not just their objectives. Have a lot more of your salespeople sharing what's going on. Let the most successful people share what they're doing, that others can hear it, right? This is a really important time for people to be sharing what's working, because a lot of people don't know what to do, right? So we need to open up the wheels even more for people to share what they're doing, what's working, so that people can learn from others, right? So that's my best advice right now. And keep them up, got to keep them up, because this about sales, right? Is that if I'm down, I'm not going to sell. It's like Norman Vincent Peale used to tell a joke when he was a teenager. He was selling greeting cards. That was his first job. And he said, his first week of selling greeting cards, he would knock on people's door, and his opening line would be, "You don't want any greeting cards, do you?" And they would say, "No." And they would slam the door shut, right? And, it's an old joke, but it's true in sales. We throw boulders in front of ourselves. If I'm showing up feeling negative, feeling like I'm going to lose, so we got to keep the team up. And that's our job as the leader, because if I'm up and I'm hearing about victories, however small they are, it's going to make me more likely to want to get on the phone, because it's hard to get on the phone and your first line is, "You don't want any greeting cards, do you?" And the client's probably going to say, "No, I don't really want any greeting cards. You're right." Instead, I'm showing up curious. I'm showing up. Very important for people to do that. So other questions, comments? And Denise, it's okay if you have more. You're asking good questions. So
I actually do have a comment, something that worked for,
sure.
Yeah, something that did work for us that I'll share with this team is when we started going into pandemic mode, we immediately designed a hello card. And we have probably sent over 500 handwritten hello cards that just say, "Hello, what can we do for you?" Something in the mail. Lots of people get emails, and we're actually seeing results. How can we help you? Hello, just want to check in, see how you're doing it. Doing it by the old-fashioned mail. But anyway, it's working for us. We're seeing results. And they're saying, yeah, you sent me something in the mail that said hello. So anyway, that's my...
I love what you said there is, many of you may have read the book or familiar with the concept Blue Ocean, Red Ocean, right? It was a mega bestseller a few years ago. If those of you don't know about it, very simple, blue ocean. It comes from a fishing analogy. It's kind of a gross analogy in some ways, right? So if I'm out fishing where no one else is fishing, it's a blue ocean, not a lot of blood in the water. If I'm fishing where it's a red ocean, lots of people fishing there. And so I'm not going to be as successful in a red ocean. So what I like about what you said, Denise, is not a lot of people getting things in the mail right now from people, right? Now, if you're like me, you may let the mail sit for a day before you open it, but you're still going to open it, right? And so where can I be in blue ocean? How can I do something for my clients others are not doing, right? And so that's a good example of thinking about where's blue ocean, right? If everybody is sending emails, we're going to send mail. If everybody's doing this, we're going to do that, right? So try to be creative. I like where you're going with that. Where's blue ocean, not red ocean? It's really a great book, by the way. Just look up the concept blue ocean, red ocean if you've never read it. It's a great, very simple business concept of how you unearth needs rather than just follow the crowd where everyone else is really competing with you. Other questions or comments? I love you sharing things that are working for people. Anybody else? We got a few minutes left. Another thing to think about as a leader, we talked about you being positive and optimistic, and that's so important if you're the leader, that you stay in that place. Is I think about what can you expose yourself to so you stay up. Who are the people? What are the things you expose yourself to? And I like watching short videos myself. We by the way, if you go to our website, drjohnizzo.com, that's just drjohnizzo.com. We have sets of videos there. We have a YouTube channel as well. Find the people you want to subscribe to, find some videos that are helpful to you, and I guess I'll turn it over to Casey in a minute. I'll make a couple of comments. And we will be archiving these videos, and Applied Imaging make that available to you. And you feel free to share that with others on your team and with others. I guess I'll leave you with two thoughts. I heard a saying years ago that really I've never forgotten. And in times of crisis, I always remember this saying, which is that adversity is to character what wind is to fire. It extinguishes the weak and it strengthens the strong. Adversity is to character what wind is to fire. It strengthens the strong and it extinguishes the weak. This is a time where our character can really show. And so really lean into that. And wake up in the morning and ask what you can give, and that's the kind of character that will grow. Finally, one of my favorite Michiganders, Robert Schuller, the televangelist. I grew up watching him as a kid, moved to California, built the Crystal Cathedral. During the crisis of the 1980s, he coined a phrase, tough times never last, but tough people do. And, this is a tough time. But, we will get through this, and by staying optimistic, by not taking on the grief of tomorrow, by celebrating the victories, by staying curious about how we can meet the needs of others, we will survive and thrive. It will be tough, and it'll be tough for a while, but there will be blue sky on the other side of this. The question is, will our market share be bigger? And will we be proud of how we showed up in this moment? And I think if we ask those three questions, will I be proud of how I showed up? Is how I'm acting right now, will it grow my market share, even if the pie is smaller now? And the third question is, what can I give to my clients and to my team now instead of what can I get? If those three questions guide us, when the blue sky shows up, we'll be the ones who have been more successful. And I want to wish you and your family safety. It's been a tough time for people. I know I personally have friends who know people who've died, who've lost people during this crisis. I have people on our team who have kids who've had COVID. I know how tough this can be. Stay safe, be kind, and stay up. We will get through this. So Casey, let me turn it over to you, and thank you for an hour of your time today. I appreciate it. So Casey, let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John. Really appreciate you sharing your message with everybody today. I always feel like if I can get a couple takeaways in an hour, and I've got a whole list of stuff, and I am fortunate enough to be able to talk to you frequently. So thank you again for sharing today. So 5 people on the call today. We are going to select at random to receive a autographed copy of John's book, Purpose Revolution. Thank you to everybody who's on who's spent an hour with us, and hopefully you guys found it as beneficial as I did. So again, I don't think I saw any other questions. So that being said, thank you to everybody who's on here, and thank you again, Dr. Izzo, and everybody have a great day.